started my first company at 14. I started my second company at 17. So people who end up being successful have something called a superiority complex. And I think I had grown up with that. It was always to prove to myself that I could do it.
Were you bullied when you were young?
Oh, that's interesting. Because I actually was. Because I went to a boarding school that was 27 grand a year. And I remember one day, unfortunately, my dad passed away because of 2-stroke. It was only then that I realized that I was like properly born.
If you had not gone back to the UK, do you think you would have been as successful as?
Yes.
How?
Because here's the thing with business, right? The biggest determinant of your company's success is time.
What do you think is the most important skill for entrepreneurs?
I'm going to give you a soft skill and I'm going to give you a hard skill.
Okay, let's go. You're welcome to Connected Minds podcast. My name is Derrick, Abaitey, and thank you so much for tuning in to our podcast. And wherever you're listening from, we appreciate you. And to our lovely viewers and our regular listeners, if you make it to the end, I would love to know in the comments. I'm speaking to an entrepreneur who was born in the UK, shipped to Ghana, went back to the UK and became a multi-millionaire at 27. He's very popular on social media. Now, this conversation is really going to get deep into the aspects of him that probably some of the interviews have not been able to get through. But I really want to understand what Ghana and Africa has contributed to when it comes to his success. And what some people in the diaspora, the African community in the diaspora, what sort of principles can they also apply from what he has been able to achieve all these years? You're welcome to my podcast, Timo Armoo. How are you doing?
Thank you, Derrick. I'm good. Very impromptu. I don't think people would know the story, but you, someone in your team or you managed to find my number, message me on WhatsApp, and it just so happened today was the only day that I could actually do something that was not on the program. And here we are.
Yeah, I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I mean, I was driving myself, and then, I got the message and I saw a screenshot. So they just said they've emailed you and you haven't responded. So I should try my luck. The universe is talking.
It is.
We've all responded to it. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Let's roll.
The first time you came to Ghana, we were trying to get you. It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's happened this time. So we kind of prepared before.
Okay.
But now it's even more exciting because you have a book that is coming out that people can pre-order. So we can talk more about that as well.
Sure. Let's roll.
Let's start off. So you got shipped to Ghana.
Wait,
born in the
ship.
UK.
That sounds crazy. But yeah, sure.
Right. Shipped to Ghana.
I got shipped to Ghana.
Right. What's the story?
I got shipped to Ghana, as you say, actually, because it was either that or I ended up in care. Because basically my parents, I was unplanned for, is probably the best way to say it, right? It was kind of like an accidental pregnancy. And so basically they were like, look, we love this kid, but in terms of the way that the family setup is, it probably is not going to be very conducive to having a healthy kid. So my grandmother, who actually lived in London, who lived in Ghana, she lived in East Legon. She actually then came to England, and then she said, "Do you know what? I think we should take this kid back to Ghana." And my parents, God bless them, they decided to also agree with that, which I presume, especially for my mom, it was quite hard. In fact, I know it was quite hard for my mom. So every day I'm like very grateful for the fact that they agreed to do that. And my grandmother and we lived in East Legon for 10 years. And so it was out of, a negative circumstance. But actually, I think it was probably top 3 best things to have happened to me, I think, was actually spending my first 10 years in Ghana.
How so?
I think there were so many things that in hindsight, when you're a kid at that age, you have this sense of, I want to go back to my parents. But then in hindsight, you realize a lot of things. Like one, I think growing up in Ghana taught me immense discipline. because, going back to England, if you are naughty or bad in school, like you don't get hit, right? In Ghana, I got hit several times. In fact, there's a teacher who I still, when I think of him, I hate him so much. Mr. Ibu is his name. I hate him. I hate that guy.
Was he a French teacher?
He was like an Ewe or Ghana teacher.
Right.
If you're listening, Mr. Ibu, I still don't like you. But he'd hit me a lot, because at school, I talked a lot. I was quite boisterous. But I do think that it taught me this idea of like there are consequences for your actions. And then most importantly, and I know you said that the UK is the second most popular audience of this podcast. And I actually think that a lot of people will be able to empathize with this, which is in those years, because I was born 1994, in those years, I think if I'd grown up in London, especially South London, which is where I went to, near like Peckham, Brixton, if I had been there, I think I would have been very easily influenced. Around that period was when like the beef between Peckham, Brixton, Oak Kent Road was just at an all-time high. And I think I would have been easily influenced because I'd have been living with my dad. He was always working. And so like there was always this kind of sense of, well, if there isn't someone at home, then what could happen is you end up,
on the street.
On the street. And man, there were so many people because I went back to London when I was 10 and I went there and I did year 6 there. And I remember there were so many people in the primary school I went to. It was called Townsend. I remember there were so many people there who were quite smart, but then they just wanted to do road because from 7 to 10 or like the area they lived, it was just the conventional thing was just to do road. And then I remember just like looking at them and just thinking, don't you realize you can do more? Like, don't you realize you can be more?
But that was after you had gone back to the UK.
That was after.
Was it something here that instilled that in you?
As in that feeling
Ghana,
of, as in that feeling of just being like, wow, I can be more, I can do more. Do you know what it is? I think I always saw London or England as like the promised land. Like I always saw it as, I was born there and then I came here for 10 years and now I'm going back there to like finish the story. And I always found that feeling of, wow, I'm so lucky I'm in this place. I should make sure that I make the most out of it.
Well, how was the situation in Ghana when you came in?
It was great. Like my grandmother lived in East Legon. She said she was the first ever person to live in East Legon. I can see that. She knew all the, I said she knew. She's still alive. She knows all the politicians. Like everyone knows her, right? But still, I felt this sense of like all the new stuff, the gadgets, the technology, like all the cool stuff was in England. And so when I get to England, I'm going to make sure that I like take advantage of that opportunity.
So mentally, you didn't really come to stay, right? You always in Ghana, right? You always felt that you had to go back.
Yeah. I think my grandma told me this story that at 8 years old, even before my parents decided, now it's time for me to come back. I think she tells me the story of one time I came back from school and I was naughty or something like that. And then I said something like, well, I'm only here for a short time anyway. So I think like in the back of my mind, I just had this feeling that I was going to go back. I mean, even if we accelerate and we think about my time in London, I lived on like a 4th floor council estate in Oak Kent Road, right? Like no lift. It was like smelly, drugs, etc. And I remember every day I would walk back from school, I would run up the stairs and I would say like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. Like I would almost brainwash myself. And I think it was a similar thing to Ghana, not in a negative way, more like, well, my story develops in England. It doesn't develop here. So I'm just here for like a pit stop. And then afterwards,
do you ever really enjoy the moment?
I don't think I enjoyed Ghana.
Okay.
I think I endured Ghana.
Okay.
And that's not a negative thing. I think I just was like, okay, cool. I'm very happy for the things I've got from here. But all of this stuff here, I'm just kind of like practicing to go back. And I don't know where that came from. I think also my mum, God bless her, amazing woman. Like she'd call me every week. We do these like spelling tests. We'll do these Bible tests. I remember that she would pay me to read books. And now in hindsight, my mum had been on benefits for a while. And I remember she'd pay me, I think it was £61 to finish a book. And that was where I found my like deep love for reading. That is where I found my deep love for just like figuring out how things work because of that. So to me, there was always that feeling of I'm going back, and so time needs to move a bit faster.
Yeah. How was the relationship between your mom and dad when you got back?
Oh, I think the less said about that, the better. I think it was very tumultuous. They were separated, then they got divorced. But again, they did their best. I think the thing with a lot of African parents is for a lot of them, especially the ones who make that transition from Ghana or Nigeria to England, there is this sense of survival is the primary thing. And so, especially if you bring, say, a kid into the world who you hadn't, both of you hadn't actually planned for, then what can happen is that you almost think, I'm not going to say they were an inconvenience because I don't think at all I was an inconvenience, but if your primary mode is survival, then when you wake up, that's the first thing that you think about. Like, my dad was a social care worker. I remember actually, this is a very funny story. I think a lot of people can empathize with this. For the longest time, I thought my dad was in property because I'd see these letters that would say like Southwark Home Care. So in my mind, I'm thinking homes, like he deals with property. But something didn't make sense in my mind because like we lived not in a good place. So I'd be like, how is this guy in property, but he's not able to afford a bigger place? And then as I got older, I realized actually it's like social care. Like he is a manager at a social care home. But anyway, to go back to your question about the vibe between them, I think it was fractured is probably the best way to say it. Didn't see quite eye to eye. But when it came to me, as I grew up, when it came to me, they had their ways of working together to make sure that I was taken care of. And my mom would do, I am so grateful to my mom because she did a lot of very interesting sacrifices. Like, for example, when I was coming back to London, she decided, I guess she and my dad decided, but I know for her it was quite painful. Like, she decided I should go and live with my dad because she realized that basically she saw this stat, which was that Black boys in London who grew up without a father figure were 4 times more likely to end up in prison. So you can imagine, for a mum, her only son, her only child, that was actually a very powerful thing. And so I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to my dad for working like really hard to put food on the table for us as well. But yeah, it was a very tumultuous thing.
Which part of your life, Ghana or UK, has contributed to your mentality about business and success?
Oh, I mean, UK. But that's also because I started my first company at 14 out of a desire to make money. I started my second company at 17 that got sold.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Is that because situation at home was not that great, so you were looking for ways out to help the family?
Yeah, not to help the family. Some people, they go on podcasts and they say like their thing was to help their family. For me, it wasn't. Okay. It was always to prove to myself that I could do it.
What reason did you have to always prove to yourself?
So I read this book a while ago, probably like 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it talked about the fact that people who end up being successful have something called a superiority complex, which is that they believe they can be better than anyone else. But most importantly, they have a superiority and an ego to believe that they can be better than the actual surroundings that they're in. And I think I had grown up with that. I think around like 12, 13, I think I just was like, hang on, I am smarter than most people. I'm more capable. I can learn things. I can act more. I can think faster. So if that's the case, then I'm going to back myself and say, do you know what? Yeah. let me get on with it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out whether it's a thing of living with your grandmom and it's because I see a few people that, when they spend time with their grandma, they end up being great, right? But it's also a question I've got in my head, which may also stem from where you were bullied when you were young.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I actually was. I was bullied. Wow, that's crazy. I've never thought about how that played a role. This is turning into like a therapy session. I love it. I was actually bullied. Now I think about it. So when I was younger, I had a very square head, like an obvious square head. And I remember I was bullied for that. And I always felt a bit like an outcast because I really wanted to learn new things and I really wanted to be that nerd. But I also was like a black person in London and in an inner city school, which meant that like I was also chilling with like the black kids. And unfortunately, a lot of the times they weren't really trying to learn. So I was the outcast there, but then also when I then kind of started to cultivate a group of like fellow nerds, whether it was the white people or the Indian people, I was also the outcast there because I was the only black kid there. So I think at various times I felt a bit like an outcast, and what business provided me was this idea of, okay, now I can be the person who like, I'm the person. I'm creating my own world as opposed to being an outcast.
That's what that just came to mind. So it's almost as if now you are in charge of what you can make your life become and how people see you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, do you know what? For most people, I think if you really, really dig deep and you think about, all right, what's my drive? And, the first thing you might think about is family or money, etc. But I think if you ask yourself, there's this whole idea of asking the 5 levels of why. And when you ask yourself the 5 levels of why, you really come down to like the fundamental basis of the reason why you do certain things. And I think I think for most people, if they ask themselves the why, they'll find out that their why is actually significant. It is that they are yearning to feel significant. And for me, business fundamentally was like my way of feeling significant.
But then also when you later found out that, you were taken to Ghana by mom and dad, did it make you feel a certain way?
I do think that what it made me feel was this sense of, not I'm going to show them, but I'm going to prove to myself that I was meant to do this. My mom always told me I was a prayed for child. And she's told me this story before that, someone prayed and then like the day afterwards or that night was when she became pregnant, right? So I think as a kid, when you're constantly told that you're a prayed for child, you just believe in that, right? Like you just believe that you were ordained to do significant things. I got this question after we sold Fanbytes, right? And I remember someone asked me, did you think this will happen? I just said, yeah. Because that's the way I designed it in my head. I said, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to build this business. Maybe that's not going to work, but then I'll learn. And then eventually, before I'm 30, we will make it so that myself and any future family don't have to work.
How early on in your life did you start thinking this way?
I think at 14. I think when I started that first business and I realized I could make, the first business was a tutoring company. I went and I tutored people maths because I was very good at maths. And then what happened was other kids will come to me asking about other subjects, chemistry, biology, physics, things I wasn't actually good at. But then what I would do is in my school, City of London, I will go to the teachers and I will ask them and say, in the last test, who got the highest grade? And then they will tell me, and then I'll go to that student and just say, yo, do you want to make money? So effectively, I had built, and that then became the first business where I would connect tutors to tutees and I'll take a cut. And I think when that happened, and I grew it to 65 tutors in 6 weeks, like we're making money, I remember thinking, hang on a sec. So you're telling me 2 months ago, this thing didn't exist. And then I, through my mind and my effort, made this random idea exist and people are paying me for it. I think from that time I said, oh, okay, well, the game's on then. It's like, well, I just have to learn enough to apply it to more businesses, and eventually one of them will hit.
When you made that money, I mean, what were you doing with the money?
So actually, there's a very funny story, and this is a story that I've told before. So, unfortunately, the person who actually got me really into business, especially that business, unfortunately, that person is not alive anymore. That person was my best friend in school called Konnected. And it's actually a very crazy story, by the way, of how I found out Konnected unfortunately passed. I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time and my best friend, and walking down the park, and then I saw Kunal Patel. I saw it on a bench, and I was like, no way. And then I called a friend. I said, hey, what's going on? And she said, yeah, he had passed away a year ago. And actually, in my book, I actually make a dedication to him, because I say, like, thank you for getting me into business. Like, thank you for making me believe in myself. Because actually what happened was, at 14, he and I were coming back from school, and we saw this black Mercedes-Benz car. And he just looked at me and he said, like, oh, how much do you think that cost? And at 14, I didn't quite understand money. I mean, none of us really do. So we just say the biggest number we can think of. And I said, like, £500. And £500 is a car. Because to me, that's like 5 million. And that car is worth 5 million. And so what happened was, then he made the bet with me that changed my life. And he said, like, I bet you wouldn't make £500 before you turn 18. And he didn't say it as like, you're rubbish, etc. I think he knew I could do it, but it was more like a dare. It's like, okay, cool, let's go. And then that was the thing that I remember going online and trying to, this was 16 years ago. So like, I remember going online and typing, like how to make money. And if you remember, at that time, it's just scams. It's like, all you see is scam. But the one thing I saw was actually a quote which said, like, work with what you know. And on that day, I had done very well on a maths exam. And then now that's when I said, oh, okay, maybe I'm going to teach other people maths. And that was the genesis of that tutoring business, where I was teaching people maths, and then people started coming to me, and I found...
Let me stop you here for a minute. We are on a journey of changing the minds and the lives of people. So if you haven't subscribed and become part of the family, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you. Now let's carry on with the conversation. How did you get your first client for that business?
I was well known in school as like the maths guy. And so I just went the next day. I said, okay, guys, I have a business now. It's called Tim's Tutors. Tim's Tutors. At that point, Tim's Tutors was just me. And basically I was pricing it as £10 an hour. And that's it. £10 an hour, and I'll tutor you.
And when you would make money, what would you do with the money? What did you do?
I just had it. I just had it. I mean, I've never been a crazy spender.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what I did with it. Yeah, I just had it. In fact, no, I know what I was doing for it, right? Because the whole plan was like, let me save to get that £500 to buy the thing, right? But after a while, I realized, well, that car's not worth £500. It's worth a lot more.
But during these times, you were still living with your dad?
Yeah.
In a council flat?
Yeah.
And he was probably still struggling to, pay bills here and there?
Not at that time. At that time, I think things were going well. Now, unfortunately, my dad passed away because of a stroke. He had 2 strokes. And I remember after the first stroke was when I really got a sense of like how much we struggled financially. Because, when you're like 14, 15, it's kind of like, well, okay, I have my Cocoa Pops in the morning, blah, 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 right? It's only actually, this is a very interesting point. It's only actually when I went to boarding school, I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to a boarding school. It was only then that I realized that I was like properly poor.
Huh?
Yeah.
How?
Because I went to a boarding school that was 27 grand a year. And there were people there who were paying that 27 grand a year. And I remember one day, I remember being in the field, and then I heard this fan, like, and then I looked, and it was a helicopter that was landing, picking up one of the kids. And I just remember thinking, what the heck? there are people who are not Richard Branson and Alan Sugar and Mark Cuban. There are big guys who can afford helicopters and you wouldn't have heard of them. Because in my mind, at that point, I thought it was either you were like Steve Jobs or you were poor. You know, it's like...
There's no in between.
There's no in between because, or not even poor, it was like the rich people were Steve Jobs and Richard Branson and then everyone else. Because I didn't have any exposure to anyone in the middle who actually had money. And then when you go to school, when you go to like a boarding school where that is the normal conversation, you go, okay, cool. Because all of you guys have parents who nobody knows them, but somehow you have 8 homes. You can ski anytime. You're being picked up in Ferraris and Porsches and Rolls Royces. Okay, there's a way to get to where you are, which means I'm not Richard Branson or Alan Sugar and all those people.
What did that do to your mentality?
So you know when I mentioned earlier about having a superiority complex?
Yeah.
I think it made it even extra. Because here's a very interesting story, and I think a lot of your audience will be able to relate to this story. It's actually mad. So in school, before I went to the boarding school, I identified as like the smart one. Because, you know, I started a tutoring business, it's all going good, choppy. Everyone's happy, Timo's smart. And then I went to Christ Hospital, which was the boarding school. And then I met really smart people. And then I went, okay, these are the big boys. You know, we have people who are scoring 100% in maths in every maths module. People are doing university maths at 15. Like, we're talking, yeah. And then I went, okay, I can't win this game. This game of intelligence, I can't win it because you guys have been groomed from 11 to just be, you know, Oxbridge is just waiting for you. And so the thing it did to my mentality then was I said, all right, cool. I may not be able to win the intelligence game, but at least I can win the business game. And so that made me extra. I said, okay, I need to find a way. Because remember earlier that I said, I think at our core, everyone is driven by significance.
Yep.
I wanted to be significant in that sixth form. And the only way I could be significant was if I became the business guy. And so that's when I said, all right, cool. And so that was why at 17, whilst in that school, I then started my second business, Entrepreneur Express. And then that business, within 11 months, it got bought for £110,000. And I remember coming to school the next day, because it was a boarding school, so I had to go to London, sign some documents, and then come back. And I remember thinking, yeah, I've arrived now. You know, you can all do your Oxbridge and go to your Harvards, thank to you, but like none of you guys have built and sold a business at 17, and I'm going to be that guy, and now I've done it.
So I really want to find out, right, during those times when all this money is coming in, did you support home?
One of the things that I cringe a lot about is after we sold that business, so that business was called Entrepreneur Express. It was like an online magazine. And we sold it to an agency called Horizon Media. And the way the payment was structured, first I made 70 grand, and then 6 months afterwards, then they added 40 grand. What I did so stupidly was that I got high of my own supply.
Okay.
I had an ego because I had started this business. We had grown it very fast through like Facebook groups and etc. And I've told that story elsewhere, so I'll just say, you know, that we grew the company. It was just me and 2 other people who were all freelancers, so they all came to me. And within 11 months, in that period, I had, you know, someone bought it for 110 grand, and I was like, wow, I've got the Midas touch. I can just do anything. So then what I did was I started getting involved in something called spread betting. I know. Yeah. Idiot. Absolutely idiot. Yeah. Idiot. What's the tree term for stupid?
I don't think I can say the word.
Is it word Jimmy or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Me up Jimmy. And I was just like, what the heck? So I spent 40 grand on spread betting because I thought I had the Midas touch. Then I tried to invest in some other stuff which didn't quite work. I gave a bit to my dad. really, in hindsight, I should have done more. But again, I was like this 17-year-old ego-driven kid where I was like, oh, I've done it before, I'm going to do it again, do it again, do it again. And then I just squandered it. I had a bit left, maybe 20, 30 grand, which I then used to try some more businesses, etc. And then eventually that then led to Fan Bites. This is actually a lesson for everyone. In my book, there's a chapter that I say, the ego really is the enemy. Because for everyone who would achieve some level of success, it's very easy to assume that means you have arrived. You know, it's so easy. Especially, do you know what? Sometimes in my African friends, I see this a lot.
It's worse.
Yeah, like we reach a level and we think that's the max level, but it's not the max level. So I'll tell you actually an even funnier story. This is actually this happened about 2 years ago. After we sold Fan Bites, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, you know, because we sold the company for like tens of millions of dollars, right? Like multi-8-figure deal. And then I hang out with a few friends who, you know, one of my friends is the founder of Lad Bible. And Lad Bible, they took a social media agency, they took it public for 300 million. And I remember like almost hanging out with Aryan, my friend, and mentally going, you're no different to me. Not in like a way thinking, you know, not in a malicious way, just going, wow, we both started social media businesses and your outcome was like 10 times, you know, 9, 10 times bigger than mine, which tells me that there's like a bigger level to play. So I might think I have arrived, but I haven't even got out of the station. And that, for me, almost like surrounding myself and being very cognizant of just how big the game is in business, how much opportunity there is in life has been one of the most grounding things for me.
But the question is it always about more money, though, in business?
No, I think it's about more achievements.
But how would you quantify that?
Yeah. So on our way here, do you remember that you asked me the question about, okay, so what's the game? And then, like, completely unprompted, I said, well, it's not about more money. I think it's about more achievements. And more achievement is, so the beautiful thing about business is that the way that we measure results is money. So it's a very objective scoreboard. But achievement can come in the size of the impact that you have, the size of company you build, the lives that you impact. Because if I'm really being honest, and it's been a few years since Fan Bites, if I'm really being honest, like, we didn't change the world. Like, brands came to us to connect with Gen Z and we connected them with social media influencers.
Right.
No one's life got changed. It was just, we're just in the flow of money. Brands come to us, we plan a marketing campaign, we get influencers. The influencers then, you know, talk about it. They get paid, we get paid. It's not really like an impactful thing, right? Even my friends who are very good at property, because I know that we talked about it earlier, right? You could actually say, like, you know, if you build an apartment building of however many people, you are impacting those people because you're providing them shelter, etc. In our business, it was just purely just vibes. It was just a purely like capitalistic thing, you know? And so I think it's not just money. It definitely can be achievement. And achievement can be measured by, yes, money, impact, fun, team, potential. Potential is a big one. I don't think I've reached my potential at all.
Well, how does it look like to you when you think about it?
So I always think about business as having levels, right? Level 10 is, let's say, like Elon Musk, where you are generally building new things which change the world. Yeah. You know, Tesla changed the world. Solar City changed the world. Neuralink changes the world. Twitter, to some degree, I mean, I know he didn't found that, but like changes the world. And then there is levels underneath that based on impact and like how important and how big of a leader you can be. And I think I'm on level 4.
Timo, if you had not gone back to the UK,
yeah,
do you think you would have been as successful as you have been?
Yes.
How?
I would have figured out a way. Maybe not in influencer marketing. Because here's the thing with business, right? Or like becoming successful in anything. Especially now that I've sold a few more companies since Fanbyte, I've come to appreciate something. That the biggest determinant of your company's success is timing. It's not actually how good you are. It is, have you picked the right wave to serve? So like at Fanbyte, when we started in 2017, social media influencers were up and coming. And so it's no surprise that within 18 months, 10 different companies like Fanbyte got bought. Some from 10 million all the way up to sold for like 100 and something million. Because we all rode the same wave. So to answer your question about would I have been successful here? Yes. But I think it would have been a different wave. Maybe I would have started a fintech company. Maybe I would have started a Web3 company. But I would have started something which was like the way. Maybe I would have gone into property and like figured out a different angle, bringing in tech. But I would have figured out a wave. And this is actually a very important thing, I think, for your audience to understand. It's not so much how hard you work, it's what you choose to work on. Because you and I could both start businesses. You could choose something right now, which is like an AI-enabled thing. I could go start a restaurant. I could even start an agency. But you will grow faster because the market now wants more AI solutions. And so sometimes, and unfortunately, I see this a lot with like our community and our culture sometimes, where there is this deep desire to just be your own boss, right? I don't want to work for nobody. By the way, I hate that answer. I absolutely hate that reason because by definition, if you build a business which has some kind of traction, you're working for a lot of people. You're working for your employees, you're working for your investors. So you go from having one boss to having several bosses. But we can park that. But what I mean is everyone is so passionate to be your own boss, but they're not thinking the boss of what? So everybody wants to start, a catering business, do this thing. And I'm like, no. Think. If your end goal is I want to build something of significance, I want to build something where like I'm just not tied to the job every single time. I'm just not the main person doing it. Then think a lot more about like what opportunities are the market rewarding? What wave is going up now? And then how do I ride that wave rather than I just want to do a business, so I'm just going to do a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So essentially just find something people are looking for. Right.
And we'll keep increasing.
Right.
Because people are looking for haircuts, but don't become a barber. People are looking for taxis, but don't go and start a taxi company. Start something where there's like a massive shift going on in the world. There's like a massive transformational shift going on in your community, in your area, and then run it up. It's why all these fintech companies in Africa, they do so well. It's like, they do well in raising funding.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't do well in actually executing the business, but they do well in raising funding. Because the story you tell to investors, which is true, is that, cash is still the main thing in Africa. Mobile phones are increasing. Now is the time to do this.
Right.
And so when you do that, now is the time. Same way with Fanbytes. Now is the time to do influencers because it's growing. You can build a business through that.
But then there's still a big chunk of, Africans that are looking for greener pastures abroad.
Yeah.
On the continent. Then why do you think a lot of people are still looking elsewhere?
Oh, because the prize is bigger.
Okay.
Like you and I could work on the same business. I could do it in England. You could do it here. And we could both win, but then I'd win 10 times more than you because the prize is just bigger.
So it's just a matter of pricing. That's why people want that opportunity.
No, the prize. Not the price.
The value of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you get 100 customers paying you, I don't know, what is the equivalent of £1,000 here for like a big ticket thing.
Yeah.
If I go to England, I get those same 100 people They pay me 100,000. So who's gonna win? Me.
So I have a lot of young audience.
Yeah.
And especially the Gen Zs. Now, what's one mindset that they get wrong about
The
business?
thing they get wrong is they assume that if it doesn't work in 1 year, it's not gonna work at all. You start a business and you immediately think that it should work because on Instagram and TikTok, you saw some guy who started a business and then in the next scene, he's driving his Ferrari. And you go, oh my God, because I'm not doing that right now, I'm failing.
On average, how long does it take?
Do you know the average age of a successful entrepreneur?
No.
42. That's the average age of a successful entrepreneur. But social media would make you think that if you're not 18 and have your Lamborghini, then you're a failure.
I guess the biggest question is can everyone be an entrepreneur?
No. But I do think everyone can learn to make money.
Yes.
Yes. But I don't think everyone can be an entrepreneur. Those two things are very different.
Talk to me.
If you think about the making of money, it is finding problems and then providing solutions for them. And if you just do that enough times, you'll make a lot of money. The definition of an entrepreneur is very different in two ways. One of them is from a mindset perspective. You have to be very comfortable with risk and uncertainty and just have the self-ownership to say, we're going to go and I'm going to make it happen. And I'm comfortable with that. Because even though we think this, there are a lot of people who aren't comfortable with the uncertainty. It's just facts. And I think sometimes, one of my best friends or one of my close friends is Simon Squibb. And do you know Simon Squibb? Yeah. Simon Squibb. I was with him like a few days ago. I love Simon to bits. And what I love is that some people get his message wrong where they think he's saying, everyone quit your job, No. What he's saying to everyone is like, learn to make money. Learn to not need just like a salary to make money, right? And I very much agree with that. But the other part of an entrepreneur is they have to be able to build systems which are able to exist and give them leverage. So when we sold Fanbyte, we had a team of 80 people. That's 80 people, they're all part of a system. And sometimes there are people who love the thing so much that they actually don't want to be able to build a system. You are the hairdresser who genuinely loves making people's hair, and that's great. I'm happy for you. But that's not an entrepreneur. That's a business owner, but that's not an entrepreneur. So if you combine the mindset parts of it, if you combine also the fact that you need to be able to create leverage and systems, there are some people who just don't want to do that, And sometimes it really pisses me off. Now I'm going to go on a rant now. It really pisses me off when I basically see what I call like forced entrepreneurship. And forced entrepreneurship is when people feel like the thing they should do is become an entrepreneur. When asking yourself, do I really want this? Do I really want this life? Do I really want to? Because so many people I've seen, incredibly smart, capable people, here's what they do. They get into forced entrepreneurship. And the alternative was actually a perfectly great life for them where they could have been the best secretary. They could have been the best doctor. They could have been the best anything. They could have been the best finance manager. They could have been the best operations person and earn so much more money with less stress. But because they feel this, I need to be my own boss because that's what people on social media told me to do, they end up being sadder and poorer. And that I see is like an epidemic basically going out. It's an epidemic going out, especially through social media, where it feels like if you're not an entrepreneur, then you're a loser. And that is not true at all.
Let me stop you here for a minute. We are on a journey of changing the minds and the lives of people. So if you haven't subscribed and become part of the family, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification. Thank you. Now let's carry on with the conversation. I've never seen it been said this way. That's why I was very attentive, listening to everything that you were saying. Wow. I want to take you back to the African diaspora.
Yeah. Sure.
Right. in the UK
Yeah.
and many parts of the West. Most people come in with, I mean, not in your case, right? But most people come in, they stay with uncles and aunties. And maybe when they get there, these people are doing cleaning jobs or care jobs. And they are advised in most cases to do the same.
Interesting. Okay, yeah.
Right? So you see a lot of uncles, when you go to funerals or you go to churches, they all do almost the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they don't really get to build wealth or make enough money. Right? They at some point they move back to their country when they are sick and can't even live in the 7 or 10 bedroom houses that they've built here. What would, as a businessman, someone who's become a multi-millionaire at quite a young age, and a Ghanaian guy as well, what would be your method for people who've come into the country, either in the UK or any part of the West, to follow, to be able to at least also get a better life?
So the challenge with this is that it is so circumstantial. Like, it does depend on so many things. And it's funny you should say this, because I was talking with a friend about how it's sad how so many of our aunties and uncles was like, because they came from Ghana, they came from Nigeria, they came from anywhere, and they had great degrees here. They had, business degrees, law degrees, engineering degrees. And then because it's not respected in the Western world, they end up having to start again. And unfortunately, I actually don't have a good answer for that. Because I think it's so circumstantial, but also I haven't had that experience. And also I just can't fathom or imagine when you're in that level of survival. Like my dad, I remember he was constant, trying to make it happen. I remember, unfortunately, when he passed away and I went to his room and I was taking out the documents from his room and I saw his last pay slip. I think it was like 34,000 or something. And I just remember thinking, man, he was 59 when he passed. And I just thought, man, at 59 and earning less than some of my friends who they've just gone to get a banking job at 25. And I just remember being so grateful, being so grateful to him, to my mom, to be like, man, now I get it. Now I get why you almost felt constantly on edge to constantly do more hours, do more rota, do more stuff, do work on Sundays, work in the evenings, do all of that just because, because this was a small amount of money that you had to make work for us and then also send back to Ghana. That's always the case. They're always building the home in Ghana. Everyone's building the home back home.
They never get a chance to even live it.
They never get a chance to live it. And that's isn't it funny how they've all lived the same lives, right? They come in, they do social care, social welfare job. They try and earn enough to then go back home. Basically, from the time that they land in England or in America is basically a countdown clock for them to go back to where they came from.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then the question would almost be, why even leave?
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, that conversation is just...
This is turned into therapy. I love
this. Products or service as a business, or property investment or property whatever as a business.
I really hate when people tell you to get into property as a business, as your first business. Terrible advice. Terrible advice. I think it's one of the worst pieces of advice on social media. And here's why. To me, I believe that as an entrepreneur, you should be in control of how successful your business can be. And you should be able to influence it to go as fast as you can or as slow as you can. When you buy a property, you can optimize for the best location, blah, 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 blah. But the number one determinant is just time. It's just, I bought this property and over time, capital appreciation and rental income over time and mainly capital appreciation over time will help me, right? But if you start a product or service business, something where you can do more marketing, you can drive more sales, you can triple your sales in a day by, learning Facebook ads and activating Facebook ads, doing more sales calls. You can directly influence the trajectory of your business in a much faster way if you have a product or service. Because if I start an agency, I can make more calls and I can get more money. I can put out more proposals, I can get more money. If I sold products, I can run more ads and make more money. I can do it within a few days, so within a few weeks, so within a few hours. Tell me where else, apart from like building a product or service, where I can 10x my money in a year. Nowhere. Property, I buy, then I wait, then I trade. No. So for me, I don't see property as a wealth generator, in my opinion. I see it as a wealth preserver. So as I stand here, someone who's been fortunate enough to have made money, I don't own a single property. I don't own my residential property. 2 years ago, I did a deal with two friends where we own a commercial building, but that was so that I could basically loan against it and then I could use that to invest in other things. So I'm not on the property ladder as an individual. And every time I tell someone, oh my God, you should buy a house. No. It's like, no, I don't want to. Why? I don't have a family. Maybe when I do, yeah. But even then, I'll just, I don't know, rent for like 4 years or something and then just be good.
So you'd rather just the money is sitting there?
No, it doesn't sit there. It does a lot of stuff.
Right.
I buy companies, I sell companies, I invest in commodities. I do a lot of private lending. I do debt financing. In a recent deal, I did a debt financing for buying a yacht for someone. Like, the money is working and is doing things. It's just not like stuck. That's another thing about property. Like, you invest in the thing and like the money's just basically stuck in the building. And then you wait for time to do its thing, which is actually ridiculous if you think about it. If I told you, here's some money, if I told you, give me your money, you wouldn't be able to really touch the money. Maybe over time, you'll maybe get like, I don't know how fast property prices are here. It's like 8% a year? I don't know what is it here. 12% a year?
Yeah, maybe a bit more.
What, 12, 15?
Well, maybe about 15, 20.
Okay, 15, 20% a year. But you won't be able to like touch the money for the next few years. So anytime you want to now actually, you have a better idea, you have a better bet, you still can't touch it. And to me, so I'm going to say something mad controversial, and I'm sure people will cut it up. I think that investing in property early on in your career as your business, right? I think investing in property as your business is outsourcing your wealth.
Wow.
If you truly back yourself, if you truly think you are the person, you are capable and you are as smart and you are as driven and you can make it happen as much as you think, then just invest in yourself. Because maybe your property gives you 15, 20%, woo, but you invest in yourself and the business and your skills, you're compounding that 100, 200, 300% a year. And it compounds. So why would you go play a game where you just give your wealth to time to happen as opposed to you being in charge of it?
So for the many people who can't make it happen and take charge of their lives, what is stopping them?
So you go to the book.
Yeah.
What's stopping you? So at first, I want to back up and actually explain why we call the book What's Stopping You.
Okay.
Right? It's because growing up in South London, growing up with my dad, starting that business at 14, selling Entrepreneur Express at 17, selling fan bites at 27. For a long time, I had this belief that there was something else external that I didn't have, and that was the reason I wasn't successful. So for a long time, I'd say, oh, okay, at one point I said, it's because I'm black.
Okay.
Because I went to a sixth form and I see all these rich white people and I go like, oh yeah, it's easier for them to network because they're all white and I'm black. And I'd come up with these absolute BS reasons why that person is successful and I'm not. And I'd constantly read books, which are great, but I'd constantly read books and think the answer is in these books. The Think and Grow Riches, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the 4 Hour Work Week, all great books. If you take it as I am using this to help me rather than this thing is going to tell me the answer. And so after all of that journey, after realizing that all the stuff, the drive, the effort, the mental fortitude, the desire, the ability to upskill myself, to learn sales, to learn marketing, all of that was basically inside me. And I just had to believe that I was the one who could do it. That's why we then call it What's Stopping You. Even the first chapter in this book, is we are the stories that we tell ourselves. And I believe that so wholeheartedly, so powerfully. Because if you tell yourself the story, in the same way that myself as a kid, I would tell myself the story of I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy. Because I told myself that story, I became that person. And I know it sounds very woo-woo, but generally, if you then tell yourself an uninspiring story, you say, oh, I'm the type of person. That's a phrase that I really cannot stand. And it's very important to audit your language. When you say stuff like, I'm the type of person who X, you're subtly reinforcing to your brain the identity that you want. I'm the type of person who's never on time. I'm the type of person who gets angry quickly. I'm the type of person who I have so many ideas and I don't start any. But you're constantly then telling yourself all these things so that the next time something amazing happens and an opportunity presents itself to you and says, boom, act. You go, I'm the type of person. So just this an example, in this book we have 11 cheat codes. So we call them cheat codes because they're ways of thinking to get faster in the game of business. That's why we call them cheat codes, because when you're playing a game and you discover a cheat code. They're 11 cheat codes. So some of them, as I mentioned, we're the stories we tell ourselves. Another one is everything big starts small. In Fanbytes, our first ever deal was £300.
Okay.
By the time we sold the business, we're doing deals at 3 million in 5-6 years. And then my personal favorite one is It's Not That Deep.
It's not that deep.
It's not that deep. That's chapter 8. That's cheat code 8, because it really is not that deep. And as you grow in business and life, and so many times you think, oh my God, this thing is going to destroy us. This thing is going to kill us. And you realize, bro, it's not that deep. And so that's why the book is called What's Stopping You. And my desire is that in the same way that 14-year-old, very anxious kid who had come from Ghana and was I really want to make it. I really want to make it, but I'm not sure how, but I really want to make it. And driven by a lot of angst and just feeling this constant emotional turmoil. If I had read this book, I would have almost approached life in a lot calmer way and a lot more certain. And I'm hoping I can give that feeling to, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world.
You think this is what you would have given to your younger self as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, actually, even in the book, the forward is, I dedicate this book to my younger self. Thank you for constantly believing in yourself. And then, because generally, if I gave this to him, he'd have said, yeah, okay, proper, let's go.
What do you think is the most important skill for entrepreneurs? Most important.
I'm going to give you a soft skill and I'm going to give you a hard skill.
Okay, let's go.
The soft skill is actually the ability to lower your own ego and learn from others. That is a soft skill. And I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we think we have to have all the answers and we have to have all the questions. But the best entrepreneurs, one of my friends is a guy called Derrick Mukherjee. He founded Shazam. the company that sold to Apple for like 400 million. Diraj is the most low ego person because all he does is that he is not shy about going to people and saying, tell me how you did this thing. Then they tell him, and then he then does it. Low ego. Tell me how you work this thing. Oh, is that how you did it? Oh, that's really good. Cool. Bring in. Low ego. And I find so many of my friends low ego. Even with me at Fanbytes, there were so many things where when I turned down my ego, when I said, I don't need to be the one who has all the questions and the answers, life changed. And then the hard skill is actually a skill which I think everyone here can learn. And I would highly encourage everyone here to learn, which is just marketing. I think everything, my friend Dan Priestley says this, he says, everything is downstream from lead generation. What that means is if you're able to create demand and stoke demand, you will never be in want. You will never be in want. And marketing, thankfully, we're in the age where you can learn Facebook ads, influencer marketing, social media marketing, content marketing. You can learn it. You can understand funnels. I actually saw in your office, you have Expert Secrets, right? That book has changed so many lives. That book changed my life. Pick up those books, implement what they've done. Because if you have that skill, the ability to drive traffic, to create demand, you would never go hungry ever again in your life.
Amazing. Motivation or discipline?
Discipline. Not even a question, is it?
Yeah, discipline.
So you know what's actually very funny? As you get further in business, or rather, let me change that. As you start in business, you rely a lot on motivation. As you get further in business, you realize it was just discipline. When you first get started, you watch all those videos, YouTube videos. You can do it.
Show up.
Let's go. Can't hurt me. David Goggins shouting in your ear. Let's go. Tony Robbins. What was the name of that guy? The preacher. Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas, the preacher, right? And then you realize that actually all of that is very temporary.
Yep.
But when you create the systems and you allow these systems and these tools around you to make sure that you are staying on the right path, you just can't lose. And it's funny that in life, it's really interesting. In life, we celebrate the person who was fat and lost weight, but we don't celebrate the person who wasn't fat in the first place.
Wow. Yeah.
Everyone's like, yeah, you lost weight. But then how about the person who was just disciplined enough to not even get there? But then we celebrate the person who was then motivated enough to have gone bad and then gone good. And if you actually treat your life as more of the second person, the person who actually, they're like this, they don't do that. This is discipline. You find that your life would generally get better over time.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
This advice was from my Nigerian auntie. And she told me this when I was 14. And she told me this after I saw someone do something. I think they were a footballer. And she turned to me. And the best advice I ever got was from my Nigerian auntie who said, do they have two heads?
Wow.
And I remember, I still say that now. Because the do they have two heads is when you look at someone who has done something that you want to be able to do.
It's nothing special.
There's nothing special. Zero special. They've just applied themselves over a long enough time period. And then they've succeeded. But then you think that there's something special. Because your brain can't go, they're the same as me. So the best advice I ever got, and it's the best advice I give to people is, do they have two heads? Ask yourself that question and find out you are no different to the superstars that you look at. They've just committed over a long enough time period.
So there are so many books, right, that you have read.
Yes.
And I've read so many books. Why should I read your book?
So I wrote this book for the person who knows that they can become more and they can do more. And yes, in it, you learn some mental things, but you also learn some very practical things. In this book, I go into a lot of detail as to how I built businesses and the way that I study them, but also how I got my mind right. So I'm not saying that you read this book and then suddenly you don't need to read any other book ever. But I'm saying if you want a real life, relatable, this is very important. I'm not just some random guy who built a business that you can't understand. If you want a real life, relatable business from someone who probably had a similar upbringing to you, someone who had felt the same doubts and insecurities like you, and someone who is still alive to tell you the story, then this book is for you.
What's stopping you? And you can get your copy on Amazon.
Pre-order it.
Yeah, you can pre-order a copy. Now, we had a guest here.
Actually, sorry.
Okay.
I've got one thing to say about the pre-order.
Yeah, go on.
So we're doing something actually very cool, which is if you pre-order it before the publishing date. Let me say again. So we're doing something very special, which is if you pre-order the book before the publishing date in Jan, what you end up doing is you get a lot of bonuses, like my workbook for how I stay productive. You'll see my journal of the way that I plan stuff. But the most insane thing is actually we have this insane launch event, which has all the biggest YouTubers and business personalities are all in it. We're talking like Dan Priestley, Simon Squibb, Dean Forbes. All of these like great people are going to be around for the webinar, and that's if you just pre-order it. And that's my way of saying thank you to you, and also talking to these people to find out what was stopping them and how they overcame their challenges. So that's an incredible. I am so excited for that because I know it's going to change so many people's lives for that. And that comes if you pre-order.
Beautiful. You've done amazing. I had a guest here, Dr. Daniel Macaulay, who is a billionaire in Ghana. And, you know, he spoke about his book. And when he left, the comments, there were over 500 comments. 90% were requesting for the book. And they had to go back to print to get copies. So I know my audience, amazing people. I know they're going to be requesting for this book. So you can go ahead and pre-order the book. Get yourself a copy. Amazing. I'm going to get myself a copy as well. And yeah, let's support. But thank you so much. You know, I really appreciate your time and how late we were able to arrange this. And, you know, like it's also very late right now. But thank you so much. I really appreciate this. You've given us a lot of information that we can do a lot with. So to my audience, thank you so much. If you made it to the end, I want to know. And I'm going to leave all the details in the description where you can find Timo and then also get a copy of What's Stopping You, because nothing really should stop you. You've heard the story. He's done it. A lot of people that have sat here, they've done it. And he's really got everything in the book for you. So thank you. It's Derrick here. Bye-bye.